Is Skye Silvestri a murderer? Who might the Midnight entity be? Why did it go for her? Is there a deeper motive that ties Skye and the entity together? This is a Doctor Who theory. Everyone who is a Whovian remembers the classic Season 4 episode of New Who, Midnight. It was 45 minutes of the Doctor being refreshingly powerless, showing perhaps humanity not only at its best only to devolve to its worst when the going gets tough, as well as something existing on the inhospitable and highly volatile planet, the extonic light-laden planet, Midnight.
But the light out there is extonic. That means it would destroy any living thing in a split second.
Only something does the impossible and is actually living on Midnight, this entity finding this supposedly random group of humans along with the Doctor, perhaps causing them to get trapped in the first place.
To stop it, I've been on this expedition 14 times. They never stop.
Well, evidently we have stopped, so there's no point in denying it.
The entity starts possessing one of them, Skye, and starts turning the others against the Doctor and each other before the Skye-possessed being is ejected out of the shuttle back into Midnight. One of the most refreshing and most terrifying episodes, as the entity very nearly succeeded. The episode is a bona fide classic, even adapted into a stage play too. Before I expand on my Skye theory, I would like to say this isn't something I truly believe in, but something I interpreted, and for the purposes of fun, I'd like to explore it. I'll admit to some stretches of the imagination, but you will see my reasons for why, and I will be leaving rational debunkings to explain away my theories. Let's begin with what we know about Skye, as it is a 45-minute episode, and she is a one-off character, and we don't know much about her right off the bat. We know that Skye is a typical human female, as far as we know. She is a passenger on the shuttle for the Waterfall of Sapphires on the extonic-ridden planet Midnight. Extonic light being something that can vaporize anything but the diamonds, in a split second, making the planet uninhabitable by natural means.
But the light out there is extonic. That means it would destroy any living thing in a split second.
As a person, we know Skye has recently seen the end of a romantic relationship with a woman who, as Skye puts it, needed her own space and went to another galaxy. She isn't outright social, unlike Hobbs and Dee Dee, speaking when spoken to, and while happy to talk, even to the Doctor, she doesn't reveal much about herself. This is off what we do see anyway, as the episode has short time gaps before the danger where the passengers briefly socialize. We know she has brought along a book and shares the Doctor's annoyance with the shuttle's distracting entertainment system. She is glad to see it malfunction due to the Doctor's sonic screwdriver. We see Skye wears a black suit, clad in a dominant black color style. In a purely symbolic sense, black is a color scheme connoting evil and general villainy. Many villains wear black, even in Doctor Who. But here is something to think about. The entity possesses Skye and is considered her antagonist, so technically even the entity wears black. Black is also a color associated with grieving and mourning at funerals. But who could Skye be mourning? The theory came to me at the scene just after the Doctor leaves the cabin, and none other than Skye appears quickly behind the Doctor's left shoulder, from the left, asking questions, in a more alert and near-worried state than the other passengers, irritated and stating she is on a schedule and considering the wait unnecessary. Asking what is wrong, but quickly deterred away by the hostess after getting a quote-unquote answer from the Doctor. While not fully satisfied, she does not persist further. Perhaps in a state of self-wishful thinking, or just generally buying the excuse. But she is the first one we see who is visibly anxious. Maybe she's a workaholic businesswoman who went to the leisure palace to relax a short while, and today is the last day. An interesting point to note is the camera is at a position so when Skye appears, it is almost like her head is above the Doctor's shoulders. It reminds me of the shoulder angel and demon you see in cartoons, where they represent the protagonist's heroic and villainous sides to their personality. There isn't much of a tradition for which particular side gets the angel or devil, as I would have liked to wax poetic a little about subtle cartoon symbolism. Interestingly, a similar shot gets used later with the possessed Skye on the same side, so I thought I might bring it up as a potential subtle shot nod that Skye was always on the same evil side. Naturally, she has a reason to be a little concerned and curious. The shuttle had uncharacteristically stopped, according to Professor Hobbs, and they were on a planet that could kill anyone and anything, as far as they knew, so you would be concerned about your survival.
Stop it, I've been on this expedition 14 times. They never stop.
Well, evidently we have stopped, so there's no point in denying it.
But the light out there is extonic. That means it would destroy any living thing in a split second.
She is noticeably a little more anxious than the others, and actively tried to get answers by waiting for the doctor to leave so she could talk to him as if she is beginning to worry about something. Aside from the possible scenarios, maybe Skye dreads something she isn't sharing. The episode plays out with Skye getting more and more agitated, the more the entity knocks and its presence becomes more pronounced. What caught my eye on Skye was her behavior. She desperately wants the entity to stop, much more than the others, and wants the passengers to stop staring at her as if she had something to do with it. Her behavior makes me think she's not just trying to make the others think there's no prior connection to her and the creature, but she's trying to tell herself that too. And before diverting blame to the other passengers, Skye says,
What the hell's making that noise? She said she'd get me.
She said she'd get me. Somebody in Skye's past said she wanted to attack Skye. But we'll get to that later. The knockings make Skye cower into a corner, screaming in fear as the knocking nears to her, saying it's coming for me, it's coming for me. Then the entity strikes, denting the wall near her. Maybe she somehow already knew the entity would come for her long before the sounds were closing in on her and was hoping it was something else, anything else. But let's review some earlier scenes.
No, I'm with this friend of mine, Donna. She stayed behind in the Leisure Palace. You?
No, it's just me.
Oh, I've done plenty of that. Travelling on my own. I love it. Do what you want, go anywhere.
Well, I'm still getting used to it. I've found myself single rather recently, not by choice.
What happened?
Oh, the usual. She needed her own space, as they say. A different galaxy, in fact. I reckon that's enough space, don't you?
Yeah. I had a friend went to a different universe.
Oh, what's this? Chicken or beef?
I think it's both.
As Skye talks about her ex, notice that while talking, her manner is in a kind of lamenting mood where we, and the Doctor, learn her ex moved to another galaxy, apparently needing space. That is one of the typical reactions when reminiscing about a good former relationship, whether or not you are or are not over them. But maybe Skye still misses her ex? Skye even caps that off when she says,
I reckon that's enough space, don't you?
I reckon that's enough space, don't you? From what we are told from Skye's perspective, Skye didn't cause the breakup in question. It sounds like one day, the ex just swanned off. Maybe by bringing this up, Skye wanted the Doctor's opinion on the matter. Maybe his agreement of her question or sympathy too, with Skye probably still feeling a little fresh from the vulnerable experience. Looking for some secure assurance to boost her self-esteem, and settling for the Doctor's understanding from his anecdote of his friend going to a different universe. Skye quickly changing the conversation after this by dismissing talking about her ex when she starts talking about the food. As Skye knew more about the relationship than she was letting on, maybe she was deliberately a little scarce about the details of the relationship, hiding or not confronting more unique details such as why it ended and especially what her former lover was like. Was the ex just the type who got bored and ended it? Did the relationship become toxic and unbearable? There are many causes for a relationship to fail, such as lack of spark, cheating, abuse. The list goes on and we never get any more details from Skye, so we'll have to take her word on the matter. I cannot confirm for sure, but perhaps eerily, the pieces are there. We know Skye wasn't the one to end the relationship. We know the ex went to another unnamed galaxy. We know she felt different on her ex's relocation and relationship exit, even outright saying,
I reckon that's enough space, don't you?
I read the exchange like as if she wanted to keep her ex in her life, not wanting her to go anywhere, and is a little unhappy the ex left. And maybe wanted the Doctor's thoughts for comfort as some reassurance in her actions in order to feel more secure in herself. Maybe to feed Skye's wounded ego, to rationalize and encourage Skye's actions and decisions in her mind. Sounds like she thinks her ex overreacted a little in going that far to end the relationship. Unless the ex had a good reason to go that far. Anyone think it's a little jarring that the ex decided to travel to a whole other galaxy just to leave Skye? Skye never said they were in a long-distance relationship and her living nearby would be a positive factor in the relationship, wouldn't it? Skye never says the ex had dreams of going to this other galaxy or was something of a universal backpacker. Otherwise the ex leaving would be expected behavior to Skye, so she would have expected that if the relationship was souring. According to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, common key characteristics of an abuser are: 1. Objectification. Considering the partner like property, their property. 2. Thinking and quote-unquote feeling for them to maintain control and prevent rebellion from the abuser's will. 3. Denying their abuse and minimalizing the damage done to the person and its effect on them and their family. 4. Externalizing the blame to everyone but themselves, refusing to accept responsibility. As this is a delicate subject, I included all the other symptoms of abuse according to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence website. Now, I am not saying Skye is an abuser. It's not written in stone to me. I am just theorizing that, at best, maybe Skye had some of the traits and that caused the relationship to decline. Maybe like the possessiveness, the low self-esteem, the feeling of powerlessness and the controlling side. Of course, we could never get Skye to admit this. There's no outright indication. If she is an abuser, she would deny it. She's fictional, so we can't ask her. I don't know if Russell T Davies wrote Skye this way or Leslie Sharp portrayed her with that in mind, and her character died, maybe mentally, but definitely physically, so it leaves Skye a dead end. A good possibility to consider would be to ask the ex, but another dead end. We don't meet her, we never see her, so we again cannot confirm or deny it. We don't even know if she is even human. Guess it's all nonsense here.
This is pure nonsense. Doesn't prove a thing.
Or did we see her? Why did this ex go to the trouble of going to another galaxy? I imagine it would be difficult to relocate to a different part of the city, let alone a new galaxy. Why would she have to go away that far? She could just be going to her home galaxy, to her family. It could have been a long-distance relationship that just panned out. All good possibilities, folks, but I have a feeling there is more at work here. I think it was something more sinister. As a general rule, victims of abuse who are lucky to get help tend to leave the abuser, leave the home, leave the general location so the abuser cannot find them, and live with friends, family, people who can protect them. Help them get through the trauma, not being in the same place, where you'd be stuck remembering those dark memories. Maybe the ex thought escaping was the only way out of the relationship. The ex being the one who wanted to leave Skye behind and start a new life in a new galaxy. Who's to say this galaxy doesn't include Midnight too? A place affected by its star's extonic rays, so that it wasn't a well-populated place. Nobody could recognize her. Nobody would think to check. Not many would be around. And the ex could live securely in isolation while recuperating. Sounds like a perfect place for a victim to feel safe and secure from an abuser, even in another galaxy, having deliberately put distance between her and Skye.
Perhaps we're all going a little bit too far.
You're right to think this has definitely gotten a little too far-fetched. I mean, come on, it's a kids/young adult science fiction show, not a new Invisible Man movie. Apart from the fact the episode has her antagonist we never see, and we only do technically see it after it possesses Skye, and maybe as a shadow in the diamond surface of Midnight. Otherwise, it might well be invisible. Its creeping omnipresence certainly is in. There were also relationship issues in that movie, but it's not like Doctor Who hasn't tackled serious issues before, even in classic Who. There were stories tackling themes like genocide, survival of the fittest, existentialism, murder. This episode even tackles murder, and Doctor Who has lightly covered abuse and abusers before. Does the dad from The Idiot's Lantern ring a bell? However, the dad's abuse caused him to get kicked out, and rightly so. An interesting note too, as the passengers want to kick Skye out at first when she is possessed. It's not implausible. Doctor Who has proven to be versatile with many topics. Be they aliens, humans under orders, or sadistic entities. In the same season, there is a murder mystery episode done by an alien, called The Unicorn and the Wasp, so Russell T Davies' Doctor Who wasn't afraid to go to dark territory. Another question we haven't asked is, why was Skye Silvestri taking the tour in the first place? She never says why, at least as we the audience know. Even then, how can we trust her if she did? It could be the truth, it could be a lie. She's not as curious to see the waterfall like everyone else, who are tourists, or an expert on Midnight like Hobbs. She keeps a relatively bored, quiet and going through the motions type manner. Of course, she could just be that type of person. But you could say she is maybe keeping a low profile. Even pre-prepared for her boredom with a book. Could be she went on before and wasn't a fan of the bombardment of the in-flight entertainment and came prepared for it the second time. Maybe she was a tourist too. But why go to see it again? Why did she go see it at all? We'll never know. We do know that she had a ticket with her along with everyone else who had all paid in advance as revealed by the hostess, unlike the doctor.
What exactly?
Wasn't even booked in. The rest of you, tickets in advance, he just turned up out of the blue.
So it's more likely she just planned to see the site. I guess, maybe general curiosity. She was at the Leisure Palace at midnight, so she must have gone there to relax, and it was something to do, so why not? Maybe the breakup was too much and Sky needed some time off to relax and recuperate. I could buy that. A breakup, especially after a good relationship, can affect you and needs time and space to be dealt with. We still don't see how Sky got there or why Sky decided to go to midnight. Or do we? See, I think an extonic light-laden planet would be an interesting place to see. Hell, I would be up for seeing any planet in space, but as this is set in the future and interstellar travel is commonplace, I guess this would be the intergalactic equivalent of seeing the Grand Canyon or a volcano. I would be up for seeing the waterfall of sapphires even if Hobbs explained away the magic behind it. I also think it's weird the episode keeps bringing up that the light out there is extonic, and if you aren't made of Midnight Entity or Planet Diamond, you're dead in a split second.
Sorry, but the light out there is extonic. That means it would destroy any living thing in a split second.
It's like the episode keeps drawing attention to it. I guess to highlight the danger. I mean, Doctor Who has a budget to allocate for its series, so sometimes it's down to the performances and what effects they have to sell it, and they do it well here. It's not like they haven't done disintegrations before. Doctor Who is made of disintegrations, but I'll get back to this. Say you were a middle-aged woman, you were intelligent, somewhat socially isolated. A little emotionally raw and betrayed by your lover who you felt a connection to, but had just up and left you, and you didn't want that to be the case. Wouldn't you feel a little frustrated? Entitled to answers? Bitter? Angry? Needless to say, it would be a flurry of negative emotions. Wouldn't you want to know why she left? Wouldn't you want to try and fix things? In other words, wouldn't you go on a journey to get your lover back, or at least so you can say to yourself you tried? So somehow you find her whereabouts. If you're that deep in a relationship, the feelings for that person won't go away right away depending on what happened. An abuser would stop at nothing to get their victim back and would try all kinds of tactics to do so if they could. Maybe she said where she was going in a goodbye note, maybe it's from a friend, a relative, maybe you persuade them to get in touch and talk, or you were able to track her down from what you knew about her and you find her. You confront her on her disappearance. Bottom line is, things don't go well. The ex doesn't react well to the reunion. The ex doesn't want to get back together. Maybe she lays it all out. You wanted to know why and she tells you why. She wants a new life and you have no place in it. She's firm in her decision. She won't budge. You miss the closeness you two had, and seeing someone you love doing the opposite to you could stir up some bad thoughts and feelings in you. The emptiness is still there and you are nearing an age where you may be considered less attractive than you used to be. Paired with the fact that you are quiet and reserved, which could be mistaken for antisocial and unwelcoming of company. Maybe that combination adds up, so you are the type that finds it difficult to get relationships. These factors could cause you to be increasingly desperate for a relationship and equally so to stay in one. And these thoughts won't go away. You can't stand the thought of your ex being happy with anyone but you. It gets you mad. You order her to get back together, but it won't fly anymore. Tensions escalate and Sky loses control, doing something in the heat of the moment that she later regrets. Of course, the details of this are not specified. This is all hypothetical based on my hypothesis. But the reason I based my hypothesis from these possible anger issues as a potential indicator is that Sky does show a lack of emotional control in heightened situations as the entity makes its presence known. Noticeably less calm and ordered than the others, even scaring the other passengers with her behavior. Becoming more and more hysterical as the creature approaches her. She practically tore the head off Hobbs. When the shuttle stopped there,
I've been on this expedition 14 times. They never stop.
Well, evidently we have stopped, so there's no point in denying it.
then later the hostess when she told her she was supposed to do something and blaming the other passengers just before it struck. The anger giving way to fear and dread. Of course it easily could be fueled by these emotions occurring naturally in her than her emotion mindset having a motive for these reactions. I could accept it was just motiveless. I could end this video now, accepting that Sky was probably one of those people who cannot keep their emotions in check in heightened situations. I have had some times where I lost my cool. Something probably happened to you once which caused you to lose your cool. But I can't let it go, as one of the more eyebrow-raising things Skye says before her attack is she said she'd get me.
She said she'd get me.
As the creature approaches. Why would this entity remind Skye of this mystery woman? Why would anyone get Skye? We never hear Skye outright say she did something evil so she would deserve comeuppance. Not unless Skye did something to this mystery woman, something bad. Maybe somehow Skye knew the entity was already after her for what she could have done, out of vengeance. That would explain why Skye is panicky and why she would have a tight schedule. Maybe we already know why Skye did what she did and to who. Who was the only person Skye mentioned in her life? What possible motive could a person create to cause a vendetta and to cause Skye such distress? If she reacted badly when she confronted her ex, so badly that the ex was angry, vengeful at Skye, so much that it caused Skye to be worried and needed to keep to a schedule. Maybe Skye would want to leave her ex's place, if it was on midnight, and would stick around wanting to fulfill an alibi pronto by going on the Midnight Waterfall of Sapphire's tour to explain her reason for being on midnight to any authorities who come asking, especially if Skye did something bad to the ex, something unforgivable, something fatal. I think the reunion between Skye and the ex turned bad, really bad to the point it got physical and the two lashed out at each other. Skye may be starting a fight, maybe to assert control. I think tempers were flared and Skye hurt the ex, badly. Maybe even fatally wounding her. Of course the how, when, and where of it all is unconfirmed and left up for debate. But here's my reasoning. A typical trope between characters, specifically enemies, is that they would swear revenge after a great injustice was done to them by the other. Revenge is the motive behind this mystery woman who wanted to get Skye starts to make sense. The ex getting heavily wounded by Skye would want nothing better to do than to hurt Skye back. Wanting to get Skye and really get her to go away, the ex threatens to expose the fight and Skye to the public. But a nervous and fretful Skye, not wanting her behavior and actions to be reported, will do anything to not let that happen and come out on top. So with little choice in her mind, Skye finishes off her ex, killing her, to avoid trouble, and gifted with the sinister comfort of if she can't have her, no one can.
We can't have her. No one can.
Of course Sly Skye is not a murderer, at heart at least. She was not prepared for what happened. But Skye is damn near not going to give up her life, her freedom over a lack of control, so Skye does what she can to cast suspicion off her in order to make herself seem innocent, playing the part of a jilted lover trying to rebuild her life. Maybe Skye even fabricated the story about her ex going to another galaxy as an alibi to explain away the ex's relocation and disappearance. Not needing to elaborate, as she had a close relationship and subsequent close understanding to the ex and could feign pain if questioned further. Perhaps as a habit or in her state of mind, she diverts even the hint of hypothetical blame away from herself to the doctor and the other passengers when the knocking increased. As much a guilty conscience would, trying desperately to be innocent. Her state of mind causing her to lash out, get worried and think about her past. Think about her ex swearing she would get Skye for what Skye did to her. But what would make a good place to dispose of a body that would quickly leave no evidence? A big, sparsely populated place which would make a thorough search impossible even if the body was vaporized in a split second. Something to baffle and befuddle the future's advanced police forensic tech were they to investigate her disappearance. Midnight. Maybe she was able to smuggle the body and dump it out on midnight, the extonic light-filled planet, so it can disintegrate. And what would make a good alibi while on midnight? Staying at the Leisure Palace and taking the Waterfall of Sapphire's tour. Even if the ex didn't live on midnight, Skye could have taken the body there to dispose of it and gone on the tour as an alibi. Even pre-planned it so she could be there to dump the body and be there in time for the tour. While that was a lot to unpack, this theory has gotten quite Hitchcocky, and all of a sudden, now I know there are some of you out there who are still skeptical, and I respect that. It is a tough sell. Skye is an abusive wannabe murderer with anger issues, wrote Brick Gravy 1. How far-fetched can you get? Well, the video's not over, so I have more time left to convince you. You would think I'd be finished, but I have one more question. Why would Skye think it was her ex in the form of the midnight entity coming back to get her? Well, I put that down to her guilty conscience and her panicky state. Maybe that influenced the entity if it wasn't out of vengeance. Maybe it was just some alien unknown midnight native entity that learned to survive out there but had enough of midnight and wanted to be human. and live and manipulate and terrorize and kill other humans. It was able to manifest its mind inside the shuttle, inside Skye, and possess her body. Sounds a bit like the modus operandi of an undead spirit or demon. Unless the Midnight entity is the restless ghost or spirit of Skye's dead ex living on Midnight, having transcended her body and premature death to wreak horrible vengeance on those who wronged her and get away with it. But I know what you are thinking. But this is a science fiction fantasy show, not some religious mysticism. It's Doctor Who, not the X-Files. Well, you would be right, but mind you, religious imagery and iconography has appeared in this show before, even in the Russell T Davies era. I mean, religious and spiritual elements are not uncommon in science fiction shows. It's an added element that adds weight and shows a new side and insight into characters. I mean, even the Doctor Who spin-off, Torchwood, had vaguely religious elements. Death, angels, having Jack strung up and his blood drained like Christ on the crucifix. Now at first that seems a huge leap forward, but is it? Doctor Who is a TV show, and much like any other TV show, it is written by writers whose stories and ideas are sometimes inspired by other media. John Pertwee's third Doctor tenure was very much inspired by Quatermass. The Tom Baker years had a penchant for gothic horror movie monsters. The 80s were heavily inspired by Star Wars and Alien franchises. Even in this episode, Russell T Davies was inspired by the Star Trek The Next Generation episode, Darmok. The claustrophobic setting and panicky uncooperative people turning on each other is very reminiscent of The Thing. Even has an enemy that hides in plain sight, whose original form we never see and masquerades as one of the cast. Is it impossible to think that Midnight had some other inspirations? What movie or TV show hasn't? There are a lot of influential movies that deal with ghosts, invisible murderers, spirits, and possession. Who can say the writers didn't borrow some of those elements and tropes to flesh out the story? Now this is the reason I think that this is the X's spirit coming to possess Skye. It comes down to one final clue. Notice that the entity had its pick of the bunch. They were all knocking, making noise, and pretty much at the mercy of the entity. Notice that at the same time it went nearer to Skye was after her voice kept rising, eventually to the point of screaming before Skye was possessed. The entity heard the knocking from inside to respond back, so it would have heard Skye's cries outside, and when it was able to separate her and pursue, it took the opportunity. It would take Skye's life like Skye took hers so it could live again. Something it pretty much says as the Doctor is close to getting a Midnight tan, the entity confessing it could not bear living on Midnight anymore.
He's waited so long.
He's waited so long.
In the dark.
In the dark.
And the cold.
And the cold.
And the diamonds.
And the diamonds.
Until you came.
Until you came.
Body so hot.
Body so hot.
With blood.
With blood.
And pain.
And pain.
The emptiness. Get out of Midnight Sky.
The Midnight Sky.
It wanted to live as a human and would do whatever it took to remain human. Think about it. The entity has a shadowy shape, we never see what it looks like. It must have floated around the shuttle in order for it to knock all over the place quickly. It was able to get in the shuttle by passing through the shuttle walls. No hole in sight. It was able to slice off the cabin to kill Joe and Claude. Unless it was human once, how could it know what the driver's cabin was? And more importantly, it could survive outside on Midnight. I think that the X would be angry as well as Skye. She had finally gotten freedom only to be confronted, killed, and disposed of by Skye of all people. I think being angry about it would be her understatement. She'd give Skye a taste of her own medicine. Getting her. And a common theme in ghost stories are vengeance, unfinished business, and possession. I mean, come on, Doctor Who has all kinds of ungodly monsters, even the devil, but he can't face ghosts every now and then. Ghosts have been implied a few times in the series. So maybe Midnight is really a subtle ghost story, beating the subtle subtleties of The Shining. It's not outright said, and it is a story where it is up to interpretation, but it might be that there's another layer to the show. But I think something supernatural was there. I remember Russell T Davies saying he liked adding details. fragments of backstories to characters in a deleted scene explanation for Waters of Mars with Adelaide Brooke, and the pilot captain of the ship having an implied past relationship, so it wouldn't surprise me if there was some kind of implication here.
Ed has to kill himself and blow up the shuttle, and he says no couples on board, because it was sort of hinted that he would have liked to have had a romantic entanglement with Adelaide that he had suppressed because no couples were out on board. We then cut the stuff about the couples with Mia and Yuri, so this last line didn't quite make sense. And also, as Julie said, she says it's a bit sentimental, that it's not really quite true of their relationship. And so I replaced this in the dub. Instead of this dialogue, we get a much more cryptic line that was added afterwards, where Ed's last words are, "You never could forgive me." And we'll never know what he means by that, and we'll never know what went on between him and Adelaide. And I love that. I love a glimpse of a story where you've got no idea what happened, but that was all written afterwards.
I think what is concrete is from her behavior, a reminder of some vengeful memory of her past and Sky's general secretive nature, a real Marion Crane type trying to cover up and get over doing something shady. To me, Sky was not on the up and up. There may have been a dark shadow inside her long before the Midnight Entity ever got a hold of her. But yeah, that's my theory. Sly Sky is a light abuser, an amateur murderer stuck improvising and trying to evade suspicion, but unable to evade her dead ex's influence. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think this theory holds water? Am I right, or should I be the next one who gets kicked out into midnight next? Well, while it has been fun, it's over now. Now I can go back to business. Wait, what? As I said earlier in the video, the shoulder shots where Sky's head rests reminded me of the shoulder angels and demons as seen in various cartoons, and it prompted me to think there would be more meaning behind this subtle cartoon symbolism. And there is, but it is more obvious. Naturally, Sky/the Doctor's morality exists on one side and the Midnight Entity exists on the other opposite shoulder. The scene takes place where the Doctor starts to argue with the passengers, uncannily struggling to take charge of the situation from them in order to further examine, reason and make sure the humans don't make the situation any worse. This entity shows its power as all it does is copy the words of all the passengers and later just the Doctor, distorting their voices so they sound inhuman. Very much the same with the Doctor, as the Doctor tries to keep to his morality, but it is a losing battle and we see another side to him. The Doctor is also pretty scary and thus another enemy for the passengers to turn against. He is rude.
You're so special. As it happens. Yes, I am. So, let's decide if we stay back.
Yes, we can. Because there's an air pressure seal. Like when you open the cabin door, you weren't pulled out. You had a couple of seconds. Because it takes the pressure wall about 6 seconds to collapse. Well, 6 seconds exactly. That's enough time to throw someone out.
Thanks, Stevie. Just what we needed. But how did you know what to do? Because I'm clever!
Making sentences that sound like death threats.
People are dead!
Don't make it a third!
We see his ego, vanity and pride rise within him. Even the Doctor was not immune, not limited to, but for lack of a better word, to human nature. What is scarier is we don't even know if the entity used their own nature against them as it learned more, or was just manipulating the situation in its favor. At the beginning we see the Doctor is morally sound, but at the end of the scene he too has somewhat descended, and the entity is on the other side, barely able to save himself.
If you try to throw her out that door, you'll have to get past me first.
This truly was a fantastic Who episode, written and acted great all across the board. I look forward to what Russell T Davies has in store for us in the future. The Dr. Donner's back. All right.